is Manasvi Priyadarshi and this is UI5CN webinar. So this week we are going to look at my absolute favorite framework that is there, and that's Angular 4. So this week also Ajay could not be with us, and if you want to see him, he is right there, sitting behind in that blue shirt. Well, he's working on Project Core, so do check it out. He's working really hard to make it really bug free and optimized. So anyway, moving on to today's topic, we'll be looking a lot into Angular 4, like how the app is made and how should you think while making an Angular app. What is the basic idea behind it? So let's go ahead and see what Angular 4 really is. So I'll just switch to my screen and you'll be able to see my screen from now on. Okay. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about how an Angular app is in reality. So think of a library app. Now, what do you think would a library app contain? Now, it will have its main page, and you can have two sections inside it where one can be the browsing part of it, and the other one can be where you can borrow the book, like a complete system where you can just say I want to borrow this book and you can go ahead and borrow it. So if you look at this structure, we have two different pages, one for the browsing part and the other one for the borrowing part. So our Angular app basically works on components. So we have this main component as the initial part of our app. So as you can see, we have two main components, and inside main component we have the browser component, the browse component, and then we have the book details component inside browse component. And if you come to the borrow component of it, we have user details component and book availability component inside it. So what do they basically do? This browse component will have a list of all the books, and once you click on any of the book, you will get the details about those book in this book details component. Similarly, when you change the tab to borrow component, the screen will be replaced. This specific part of the screen will get replaced and you'll see the borrow component, and if you are already logged in, it will show some information about you, like which books have you borrowed and like how many books have you borrowed, when is it due. And then if you select a book, it will tell you how many of those books are available, can you borrow it or not, and what should be the day you should return it. Those sort of informations will be inside book availability component. But how do you really map it into a web app, where like the library app here? So if I go here, you'll see we can make a tree out of these components. We'll have the main component, it will have some child components, we'll have the browse component, the borrow component, the admin panel component, and each of those components will have child of its own. So when you fit it all together, you get a component for each modular parts of your app. So book availability component right here will be responsible for just keeping a track of is the book available or not, and the other functions related to it, like when do you need to return it, how many days can you keep this book with you. Similarly, user details component will have all the details about you as a user, and it will all be part of the borrow component. Now these components will need to talk to each other, will need to send data from itself to the other component, like you can say book details component and book availability component are related to each other. So while I'm browsing the content, while I'm browsing through the books and I click on a book and it gives me the details about the book. So maybe you would want to provide the user with some information like whether this book is available for borrowing or not. So it should get some data from the book availability component. Now the thing is, in Angular, everything flows downwards, like from the topmost component, it goes down to the bottommost component. But how do you transfer some data from this specific component to this specific component? So let's just call it component 1 and call it component 2. Okay. So if I need to transfer some data from component 1 to 2, what I'll do is send a request or send an event saying that okay, this specific data D needs to go to book details component. So you'll send the data D and it will go to the main component and it will trickle down through this component tree till it reaches book details component and you'll get the data there. So that's the main idea behind components, and that's how an app is made in Angular. So that's too much of theory. Let's go ahead and see it in action how we are going to make the app today. So just let me get out of Krita and talk a bit more about how do we develop an Angular app. So the first thing that you would need, the dependencies that are there for an Angular app are Node and npm. Now you can go ahead to their main website. So that's node.org. I'm sorry. It's nodejs.org, and you can go to the download section here and you'll get the installation for each of the platforms, that's Windows, Macintosh and Linux. Or you can go ahead and check out my Learn AngularJS course where you will find step-by-step installation for all these 3 platforms. You can go ahead and see how to install Node and npm on your system. So once you have Node.js installed on your system and npm too, you can just verify them writing these commands. Okay, so if you run the command node -v, it will give you the version of Node that you are using, and if you do the same with npm, then you will get the version detail for npm. That's 5.4.0. That's the latest version right now. Anyway, so once you have these 2 installed, the next thing that you are going to do is install Angular CLI. Now this time, like from AngularJS 1 to Angular 4, what the developers behind Angular have done is created a CLI for you that is very easy to use, and you are going to use it to create the app, and it does almost everything for you, like right from generating components to services to directives to creating your app and building it for production. So to install the Angular CLI, what you're going to do is type in this command, that's npm install -g. -g flag is for installing it globally, because this is something that you would want to use in each and every of your project and not just one project. And then you're going to specify the name for Angular CLI, that's @Angular/CLI. Now when you run this command, Angular CLI will be installed. It might take a while, and since I have it installed in my system already, the way to access that the CLI is using the ng command. So we'll have ng and then we'll have -- version to see what version of Angular CLI has been installed on your system. So once you run it, you will get all the information about the dependencies that are being used by Angular CLI and the version of Angular CLI that we are using. So right here you can see the version of Angular CLI that I am using is 1.3.2. The version of Node that I am using is 8.4.0, and it will tell me about my operating system too. It's Linux 64-bit version. So once you have Angular CLI installed, the next thing that you would want to do is create a project of your own. Now creating a project using Angular CLI is easy again. All you need to do is type in the following command: ng new and then the project name. So what we are going to make today is a login page, and you can go to our main website, that's ui5cn.com. I have given a link to the live running app so that you can test on it. And okay, so as you can see right here, link to Angular4 app, and if I click on it, well, I have the app right here. So this app doesn't really do anything. It's just a login form where with some validity and the feature of sign in and sign up. So if I just go ahead and give in a value here, say manasvi@ui5cn.com, and I give some random password and I click on sign in, it would tell me that it's an invalid email or password because I haven't really created an account with this specific credentials. So what I'm going to do next is click on sign up. Okay, so it would sign me up, and then if I click on sign in again, still showing me. Okay, or even better, just let me do something. I have it. I'll run it from my own system and show it to you. So Angular login. Okay. So npm start is the command that you run to serve your app on localhost. So once you run this command, your app will be hosted on your own system and you'll be able to access the app. This might take some time to compile, and while it is happening, let's go back here and create our new app. So let's call it login. So the command that we are running here is ng new login. So since we are scaffolding a complete project, it is going to take some time. It is going to install all the dependencies that the app might have. It is going to create a very nice folder structure. So if you see the log that ng new your app name creates, it's like it tells you which all files have been created using this specific command. So it has created all these files, and the folder that we'll be working on is this src folder. Our complete app will reside inside the src folder, that's a short form for source. So it has created an index.html, which will be the entry point of our HTML, and all our components will fit inside index.html. So it's very important. We'll be looking into the content of index.html. We'll have styles.css. In here we will be placing our site-wide CSS. Now Angular has this feature where it can separate a CSS for each component. So if you have created a component, then you can have a specific CSS just for that component. It will not affect any other part of your app. Similarly, we'll have .angular CLI.json. This is the file that would contain all the configuration about your Angular app. In here you will find all the dependencies that needs to be loaded, what should be the starting point of your app, what are the files it should look for before starting an app, before serving an app, and sorry, we'll have another file called package.json. Okay, and you can see package.json. Here you will specify all the dependencies and configurations about your app, like what is the name of your app, what is the version of your app, and what dependencies are there in your app. So we'll be working a lot with many dependencies like Angular core, Angular routing, Angular HTTP. We have a lots and lots of components provided by the Angular team, and we can use those to make our app more interactive, more with fully loaded with features that would make the experience of using your app really smooth and really good. So we'll just give it some more time. It's installing all the packages via npm. Okay, so npm start has run already, and we can just go ahead and check our app in localhost 4200. So the default port that our Angular app runs on is 4200, but you can specify a port that you like by giving the port flag while using the command npm start. So if I just open this, this will load our app. Okay. So it's the same app that you saw hosted. Now I have done some more modifications to it, and I have not posted to the main hosting part, which I'll be doing right after this webinar. But this is the final app that we are going to make. So let's just put in some random mail ID and some random password too. So if I click on sign in, it's telling me invalid email or password because it's invalid. Then if I click on sign up, it's going to sign up. And then when I click on sign in again, okay, well, anyways, let's look at the project that we have created just now, and it says that all the packages and the project login was successfully created. So if I do an ls, it should give me this folder login right here. Now what I have done is I have added this project right here in my Sublime text, and I'll just increase the font a bit so that it's easier for you to see it. And if I go inside this login folder, I'll be able to see all these files. So we have E2E folder, that's for end-to-end testing, and we won't be concerned with it right now. We have node modules folder, which contains all the local dependencies that our project have. And then we have our source folder, which we will be majorly working with. So the first thing that I want to show you is our index.html file. As you can see, it's a normal HTML file with all these data. So we have the title right here, and we have the base href. Base href tells your app like what should be the base URL from where uh, the app should look for the relative components. As you can see, we have assets folder right here, and inside assets folder we keep uh, the images and other things that are required in the app. So how is the app going to know which folder to look into and what should be the relative URL to assets folder? Now, once I have specified base href equal to slash, it means that the folder that this specific file is in, that is index.html, take all the paths from uh, relative to index.html. So if I have to specify a image file that is inside assets, then I'm going to say assets slash the name of my image file, and it will take from there. Now the important part, if you see the body tag, it has app root tag inside it. Now app root specifies our main component. This is the component that is the starting component of our Angular app. Now if you want to know where is this app root rendering, then you need to go inside the app folder and you'll find multiple files here. We'll have app.component.css, the HTML file, the spec.ts file, the ts file, and the module file. Now if you go to app.component.ts, you'll see a bunch of weird lines. If you are not familiar with Angular till now, then Angular uses Typescript to write all the component logic here. You can use normal JavaScript too, but TypeScript is the Angular recommended way, and that's how I'm going to show this. Now, as you can see, the first line here is import component from Angular core. Now, just like Angular CLI, Angular core is also a module from Angular, and it has got many modules inside it. Component is one such module. And then what we have here is the component decorator. Inside the component decorator, we see what our selector should be. This app root that you see here is the same one that you find in index.html. So this is how we render any component inside our app. So wherever I place this app root, everything inside this app root selector will be rendered there. The next thing that you see is template URL. Now you might be wondering what should be rendered inside app root. So template URL is we are giving a path to the template URL, and the path is app.component.html, which is the same as this one. So if we open it, we have almost 20 lines of code given from the Angular team, and this will be this whole HTML will be rendered in your app, in your index.html, where app root is there. So you can think of it as this specific tag will be replaced by this complete content inside app.component.html. Now I'm saying replaced because it's easier to understand it that way, but it doesn't actually gets replaced, but it gets added inside it. But that's some advanced part of Angular, and we'll be looking at it at some later point of time when I'll be doing some advanced components of AngularJS, when I'm doing a webinar on that. So as of now, let's keep it real simple and just imagine it being replaced, this app root, by the specific template. Okay, so now we have app.component.css. We don't really have anything inside it because it doesn't provide any CSS by default. But let's go ahead and do something. let's stop this one and let's start seeing what uh, the CLI has made for us. So we'll just go inside the login folder, and by the way, when you are making a new Angular app, the Git is already initialized there, and you can use the version control right from the start. So it will have, if you want to see, it already has .get and .getignore file, and you can start the version management uh, right from the beginning. So let's go ahead and run npm start here. Now you can use ng serve also in place of npm start, but as you can see, if you go to package.json file, you'll see the scripts right here for npm, and it says that if I say start, then run ng serve. So when I'm writing npm start, I'm just using one of these scripts. Now that is the reason I'm using npm start, because then it makes everything simple for me, because I'm just using the npm and not the Angular CLI. I have written the scripts for all of them, and I'm just using these scripts so that I don't have to write long lines of code all the time, long lines of command. So I'll just go here and write npm start, and it's running ng serve right here. So once it has started compiling everything, you will see a bunch of output right here, and it says that ng live development server is listening on socket on localhost 4200. So you just need to go to this specific URL and you'll be able to see the app. So yes, it's compiled and we can see the app here. Okay, that's the basic app or basic boilerplate that you get while using ng CLI or Angular CLI. So the first thing that we are going to do is remove all of this and start placing our own components. So I'll keep it running because it runs on live reload, and everything that you change inside your files will get reflected automatically, except for a few things. In case you are adding some new modules, then you need to restart the serving from the scratch. So you need to switch it off with Control-C, and you need to run npm start again. So we'll go to app.component.html, we'll select everything, we'll delete everything. And we are just going to write a simple div that says my app. Okay, and if I go back here, you'll see that we have my app right here. Now let's do something a bit more tougher than this. Like, it's easy only, but more tougher than this. Now I'll go to my app.component.ts. Now as you can see, we have styles URL here, which is an array of all the styles that should be related to this component. And then we have the export class, then the name of the component, that's app component, and then we have a line called title equals app. Now what I'm going to do here is, instead of title equals to app, I'm going to say just give it a second. I think it has hanged, too many processes running in my laptop. Okay, so instead of app, I'm going to write my login for. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is go to my HTML page that's related to my app.component.ts, instead of my app, I'll write something called string interpolator, that's double curly braces, and I'll copy this, that's title, and place it inside our div, and I'll save it. Now if I go back, my login form is coming right here. So that's how you do data binding in an Angular app. You provide some value to any of the variables and then use that variable inside your HTML to have dynamic components. Okay, so once this has been done, the next thing that we are going to do is make app.component.html a little better. So what I'm going to do here is, instead of this div, I'm going to have a header here. So inside the header, I'm going to have my title, and then after the header we are going to have another component for our app, that is login page. Okay, so we can just save it. So the login page component has not been declared yet, so what we need to do is create a component that's named login page. Now even for that, Angular gives us a command line, the CLI at our disposal to create a new component. We don't really have to go ahead and create it on our own. So we just go back to the terminal and we'll not stop this npm start. We'll just go back here and back to where I was. Okay, cd login. Now the command that I'm going to run is ng generate component login page. So if you just run this command, ng generate component login page, a shorter hand version of this is ng g component login page. Here g stands for generate. So if I just run this, a new component will be created for me, that's login page, and you'll see a bunch of output right here. So it has created this new login page.component.css, html, spec.ts and ts file, and it has updated something in app.module.ts. Okay, so if we go here and see, okay, these 4 files were created: the css file, the html file, the spec.ts file, which is related to testing, unit testing, and our ts file. Okay, all of them were created. Now if we go to app.module.ts, this is where you'll see this line right here. Initially it wasn't there. Okay, I have forgotten to show you, but if we create another component, I'll just name it something random like ABC. Okay, a new folder ABC will be created right here, and you'll see a new import statement has come here right here, that's import ABC component from the path that is specified to it. Now to delete a component, you're just going to delete this import statement, delete it from the declarations array right here, and save it, and delete this whole folder that was created, that's ABC. So I'll just right click here and say delete folder and delete it, and a newly created component was deleted. So basically what you did was just the reverse of what the generate component did. Anyway, so we have this line right here, import login page component from the path, and then it was added in this ng module decorator inside a property called declarations. Okay, so once you do it, this component is available to your app. Now if I go ahead and look in login page.component.ts, we'll see that the selector is app-login-page. Now whenever you create a new component, this is how the selector is created: app dash the name of your component. Now but since we are using login page tag here, what we are going to do is just remove this app dash from here. Now if I look at login page.component.html, it's just a paragraph saying login page works, and I have placed this component inside my app component. So ideally what should happen is we'll have a header right here, and then this login page would be replaced with this specific paragraph. So if we go here and we have my login form, and then we have login page works. So that's, it might seem tough in the beginning, but it's really simple. Now we'll need to add a lot of styles to make it look the way it's looking right now, but we'll get to it later on. But first let's go ahead and make the complete HTML. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do here is remove the login page component HTML that was provided to us originally, and then we are going to replace it with our own HTML. So we'll have the div tag first of all, and then a form field. Now this form field will contain an input element. Okay, so its type would be text. I'm not going to name it, and then I'm going to use one of the features of Angular where you bind a variable to your input form. So let's just name it email. I'll show you how this works in just a moment. And then we'll have another input tag which will contain password. So the type would be password, and let's bind it to the variable called password. Then we are going to have two buttons, one for sign in and the other one is going to be for sign up. Okay, now let's save it and see. What you can see here is this is my header, my login form, our first input, our second input, we have the two buttons right here. Now how would I know which one to put my email ID in? So I'm just going to put a placeholder here that says email, and I'm going to place another placeholder here that's password. Okay, and I'll also say minimum 6 characters. So the reason that I am putting this minimum 6 characters is because we are going to put in some kind of validation inside our Angular app, so that whenever you input an email and password, it does some kind of a validation and then it tells you whether it was right or not. Anyway, so once this has been done, we need to submit, or whenever I click on sign in, it should do something, right? But how am I going to detect what should it do? Now when I click on sign in, what it should do is validate my email and password, and if they are in some correct format or they are following some specific guidelines, then it should see whether a user with that specific email ID exists or not. If he does, log him in. If he does not, then tell him that it was an invalid user ID or password. So let's go ahead and create those functions inside our TS file. Now As opposed to app.component.ts, you would see that this is a bit different. We have onInit module here, and the component decorator is the same, but this class that we are exporting here, it has the same format. It just says that it implements onInit, and inside we find a constructor and ng onInit. Now if you're from an object oriented programming background, you know what a constructor is for. So whenever this class is initialized, or an object of this class is created, the first thing that happens is this constructor is called. So whenever this component comes into picture in our app, this constructor will be called. And if I just say, whenever this constructor is called, alert me login page component constructor was called, I'll save it. Okay, it has refreshed itself, and that's why it called itself. So if I refresh it again, then this login page component is being rendered right here. So this specific constructor was called. If I click on OK, I'll see it right here. Now we won't see what ng onInit does. It gets called whenever something is initialized, whenever this specific class is initialized, but that's for some advanced level Angular 4, so let's not go into it right now. So the next thing that we are going to do is create our validate function. So private validate. Now this private keyword says that this specific function that I'm going to create is private to this class, and only the members inside this class can use this specific function validate. Then I'm going to take in an email, and in Typescript you can specify the type of the variable that you are going to use. So email is going to be string. Then we'll have the password, which is also going to be a string. And since it's validating, it should return me some value, and I would want my return to be true or false. That's Boolean. Okay. Now let's do the validation. So what I'm going to do is place a check on the email and password, and then return true. So the check would go like this. Now I'm going to be using some kind of a regex here because I want to match my email string to a specific kind of string. So we'll do a very simple matching. It should see whether there is some characters before @ some characters after @ and then there's a dot, and then there's some character after the dot. So the expression that I'm going to have here is whether I have a whether I have characters from A to Z or 0 to 9, then whether do I have an @, and then whether do we have characters from A to Z. So we need at least one of them, so I'm putting a question mark, then a dot, and then I'm going to see whether we have characters between A to Z right here. And okay, that's how you write a regex here. To know more about regex, you can read it. It's really useful, and it's always good to have a good skill with you, and one of those skills is knowing how to use regex. And I'm simply going to check whether the length of password is greater than equal to 6 or not. If it is, then return true. Okay, but since I have declared this specific function as private, uh, only a function inside my class login page component will be able to use it. So I'm going to write another function, sign in user. So this specific function will be calling my validate function. So the first thing that I'm going to do is if this dot validate. Now just remember that we need to address this specific function using the this variable, and that's how you're going to call this function. And then you're going to pass in email and password. But where are you getting the email and password from? So what I'm going to do is have this right here. Okay, now if the validation was true, then I will simply do a console.log valid, else will say invalid. Okay, now let's go ahead and call this function from our HTML page. So in the button we are going to fire an event. Now this event is going to be the click event. So the Angular way of writing is it is between parentheses. So we just write click inside parentheses. It would identify whenever there's a click on this button, and then I'm going to specify which function should it call. Now the only function that's exposed to me here and is related to the sign in button is sign in user. So I'll just copy this and I'll place it here, and then it asks for argument that are email and password. So I'm going to be sending the value in the email input, the value in the password input, and I'm going to pass it here. Now the way to do it, see, what we did here was we did a data binding of hash email with this specific input right here. So to get the value, all I'm going to do is write email dot value, and then for password I'm going to do the same. Okay, let's save it, and then if I go here, I refresh my app, and in the email I write -v@ gmail.com, since ui5cn.com contains a number that would not match the regex with it. And for the password, let's give any 6-letter password, 1 2 3 4 5 6, and I click on sign in. So if I do an inspect here, and if I go to the console, okay, then the password, okay, it's refreshing it. Well, okay, let's just go ahead and debug it a bit. Password dot okay, let's do something. Let's run the npm start right from the beginning. Now, as I said, that there are some times when you need to restart your app. You can't just keep on using the live version of it. So yeah. Okay, let's do it again, and if it doesn't happen again, then okay. True. Okay, let's see whether validate is being called or not. um, we'll just put a console.log right here. Validate was called. Okay, and we'll just save it. Then it's kind of refreshing the app. Okay, we have put it inside form, right? So what we need to do is import the forms module from Angular form. And we are just going to put it inside imports array here, so that our form components in our app run properly. So if I just refresh it, okay, and I just write some random email and then some random password, and I click on sign in, and it says validate was called and it's invalid. Why is it invalid? Okay, well, let's go back to our component.ts, and let's make it like even more simple, like no digits in your email. Let's save it. Okay, abc@abc.com and some random password that's at least 6 letters in length, and I click on sign in, and it says valid right here because the regex match has also satisfied, and the minimum 6 characters for the password has also been satisfied. So the next thing that we are going to do is create a sign up user function. Okay, and it is also going to take the similar values here. So it will also do a validity check. Sorry. Okay, it will also perform a validity check, and if it is valid, it will take the user and store it somewhere in a server mostly, but since we are not creating a server here, we are just trying to make it all in a single page, in a single component. We are going to create a variable called user, which is going to be an object, and it will have two variables inside it, or two properties inside it. One is going to be email, and the other one is going to be the password. Now of course, if you are doing this, you would want to keep the password a bit more secure, but just for the learning purposes here, what we are going to do is like keep the password the way it is. And now my user variable is going to be an array of this object, so I'm just going to specify that okay, it's going to be an array. So the next thing that I'm going to do is, once validated, I'm going to sign up that user. So what I'm going to do is user dot push, the email is going to be email and the password is going to be password. Okay, now okay, since this is the part of the class, I have to use this variable right here so that it can access this user variable. Now initially what I'm going to do is specify it with an empty array, because if it is not, then it will throw me an error saying like what am I pushing it into, it's not an array. Okay, so I'll just save it, and once the sign up has been performed, what I would also want to do is see the value inside my user array. So I'm just going to write console.dir, because it's a JSON object, array of JSON objects, so console.log would not print it, but console.dir would. So this dot user. Okay, and I'm going to save it. Let's go back to our app and perform a sign up operation. I'm sorry, even before that, we need to add this event to our sign up button. So we have click, then sign up user, and the same arguments, and I save it. So we go here, we refresh our app, and we add the email and the password. So abc@abc.com, and the password QWERTY, and then I click on sign up, and validate was called. Then I get the array. This array is coming from console.dir. Now if I see this array, it says that I have one object at the 0th position where the email is abc.com and the password is QWERTY. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over all these array of objects and see whether any of the email ID and password match or not, and if it does, then I'm going to sign in. So let's go here and rework on our sign in user function. So instead of saying valid, I'm going to perform a search on our user object. So I'm just going to say for variable I equals 0, I lesser than this dot user dot length I plus plus. Okay, if email equals in fact triple equal to this dot user of I and password equals to this dot user of I dot password, and here we'll have dot email, then it wouldn't take me anywhere right now because I don't have any more components in my app, and it would require a lot more concepts of Angular like routing. So we'll just limit our scope here and see whether it is being called or not, and if it is being called, we can extend our app, which I'm planning to do in subsequent webinars. uh, you will see with in my subsequent webinars, I'll be adding some more features to this app, and it will take you to some different place in our web app, and that would require routing, so we'll cover it the next time. But for now, uh, I'm just going to say logged in. So that was done. I'm going to save it, and if it was not, then I'm going to say invalid credentials. So I'm just going to save it, and I'm going to see what has happened to my website now. So I'll just write the same mail ID again. Since I have refreshed it, the component was destroyed and recreated. That's why the user array would be empty right now. So I'll have to sign up first before I can sign in. So let's give a password here, and if I click on sign in, I don't get an output. If I click on sign up, and yes, an array was created. Then if I click on sign in again, it says logged in. It says invalid credentials too. I think there is some error with my logic here. So I just have to take it out from here, put it outside my for loop, and if logged in, then I'm going to come out of the function. So refreshed again, we'll test it again. So if I click on sign up, okay, the array was created. If I click on sign in, it says logged in. Now if I change the password and click on sign in, it says invalid credentials. If I give the correct password here, which is QWERTY U, and if I change my email ID here and click on sign in again, it will still tell me, okay, it is invalid credentials. So that's how you create an Angular app. That's how the components work, and the hierarchy of components here would be our main component, that is app.component.ts, or basically app.component in general. And then since we put it inside app.component.html, so login page component becomes a child of app component. Now that's very tip of the iceberg for Angular 4. There's a lot more to it, and if you want to know more about how Angular 4 works and how to create some really complex apps here, then what you can do is go ahead and check out our project core. There I'll be covering Angular 4 in much more details, and keep following our webinars too. I'll be giving you some tips and a lot more details about Angular 4 that would be helpful for you if you're developing some real-time projects and all. Now once your app has been made, you would probably want to deploy it on a server. So to do that, all you need to do is build your app. Now while in your root folder, what you're going to do is run a command called now. Now is just like any other service provider, where they host your app and you can actually go ahead and see it. Now before you can use this CLI now, what you need to do is install it on your computer. That's npm install, -g because you want to do it globally, and just write now, and it would install now. And then what you need to do is run this command in your root folder. So it will say deploying, and it is asking me whether I want to make it public. I'll just yes, and this URL that you are seeing right here is where my app will be deployed. Now if you are doing it for the first time, it will ask you for a login. What it will do is it will ask you for a specific email address. You give the email address, it will send a link to the email address where you will be activating the account, and that's all it will need for configuration. And just by running this command now, you will be deploying your app to this specific URL. Now the uploading is taking some time. What's happened to it? Okay, anyways, once the file has been uploaded, you can just visit this link, and that's where your app will be deployed. And that's how you can actually, I'm sorry, okay, and that's how you will deploy your app. Now the thing is, the folder that I deployed was the main folder, but before you do that, you would probably want to build your app to make it production ready, and then you need to deploy everything to a server. Now to make your project deployment ready, you need to run a command called ng build minus minus prod. Minus minus prod is the minus minus prod is the flag that you give to tell Angular that make my app production ready. So you run this command, and it will build the complete module, just like you saw in ngserve, but that was in the deployment, that was in the development mode. Now we are building it for the the production mode. So once it has built it, if you do an ls, you would see that a new folder is created called dist. Now you go inside this folder, and you see that we have all the necessary files that are required for deployment. Now if you run the command now from this dist folder, these specific files will be uploaded to this specific their specific server, and this is the URL that you will be able to use to access your app. Now it has almost uploaded all the file. Okay, so if I just copy this link address and I paste it right here, you see that's our app. So that's how you can deploy your app for free and host it on now. So go ahead, use it, and that would be all from my side in this specific Angular webinar. We have almost finished our app for Project Core, and you will be getting the content really soon. You can see the live hosted app if you go to our platform and see the Project Core page. Keep looking at it. We are updating it from time to time to give you updates about our progress here, and you will also get some, if you subscribe to us, You will also get the newsletters that will give you updates on what we are doing now and what we will be doing in future. So keep checking us out, and keep an eye out for Project Core. This project is going to be an enterprise grade one, where we are creating an end-to-end application, and we are not cutting any corners here. We are making it really good, the enterprise grade, by making everything optimized, by making by following the best practices, so that you don't run into any trouble in future. And if you do, it's very easy to debug, because you have been following a specific set of guidelines. So that would be all from my side in this webinar. I will see you in the next webinar, and we'll develop something really cool. Now this app that we made isn't looking too great, but if you add some styles to it, some CSS to it, it will uh, look really awesome. And I'll be giving you the code to this specific webinar in the link below. So like this video, subscribe to our channel, and happy coding. Bye bye.